Dr. Scott Gottlieb, former FDA commissioner and CNBC contributor, sits on the boards of Pfizer and Illumina. Dr. Gottlieb, why don't we start there? Do you think we're rounding the corner? Have we got halfway through the corner?
I'm worried that we're going to make higher highs on higher lows, that we're heading into the fall with a lot of infection. We may be hitting the sort of low point right now. And as we get into the fall, we're going to see infections start to rise, as Dr. Fauci said. We're heading indoors in the fall. The epidemiology of spread changes. Respiratory pathogens spread more efficiently in the fall and the winter season. This is a respiratory pathogen and a pathogen that typically spreads in the fall and the winter. We're going back to school, back to college campuses. We are seeing some outbreaks there that are going to be the focal point of spread within some communities. And businesses are trying to restart. And the other element here is that we're kind of exhausted. We've been social distancing and wearing masks and staying at home for a long period of time. And so you may get some fraying among people, just the adherence to the things that we know have been preventing spread. So the setup for the fall is difficult. We're taking an awful lot of infection into the fall. And the belief is that it's really only up from here. We have not reached any element of herd immunity. There's no reason why this would stop spreading in the fall and the winter.
So what do you make of states that are starting to allow more indoor dining, precisely because the weather's going to get worse, so outdoor dining will be harder, or companies like JP Morgan that are starting to encourage workers to come back, even if they had almost normal functionality from working from home?
Yeah, look, I think if you're going to try to do that, now is the time to do it. We could all be wrong, and maybe the virus won't surge in the fall. But there's a lot of reason to believe that it could. And so that's why a lot of public health officials are really concerned about the setup. But if you're going to try to bring people back to work, I wouldn't wait until October. Things probably aren't going to get any better. I think in a best case scenario, maybe we'll bounce around the levels we're at right now. But I think that there really is a risk that we'll see an increase. I think communities that have a lot of spread right now, we should prioritize what's most important. And what's most important, I think, is getting kids back into school. And so if you're a local community, if you've restarted schools, I would see how that goes before we start opening up indoor congregate settings that are purely entertainment, like restaurants and other kinds of settings like that we know could be focal points of spread. There was data out of CDC just yesterday identifying restaurants as a plausible source of spread when there was outbreaks within communities. And so those are the kinds of things that I would be doing later after we see how it goes as we reopen schools heading into the fall.
My question on offices and off that JP Morgan telling their people to come back to work is I don't understand why you have to play professional sports to get a COVID test every single day to work. Why are we not? We knew testing was the thing. We're 6 months into this. Why don't we have tests where people can get tested every day to go into the office? It seems like the antigen tests are coming out. It seems like there's saliva tests that are also coming out that would make this a potential game changer. Why is that not being prioritized to get people back at work?
Yeah, and there was a compelling piece of research out today by Bernstein Research making just this point, that if we can deploy low-cost, rapid, fairly accurate tests into the workplace, into schools, we could effectively control the epidemic. I mean, they were more ambitious than even that. The technology is available. You have antigen-based tests like the Sophia 2, the Abbott ID Now, the Becton Dickinson Veritor system, and now you have these lateral flow tests, which are basically paper-based tests, like a pregnancy test, where you basically put a sample on a piece of paper and you can get a readable result within 15 minutes. And that Abbott test is only $5. These should be coming online as we head into September and October. The federal government, quite frankly, has been hoarding a lot of the supply of these tests and channeling a lot of them to nursing homes. And it remains to be seen how effective the distribution has been of these tests. But after that sort of initial burst of supply goes into the federal chain, we should start to see it head into the consumer chain. I think businesses will have access to these kinds of tests. And we're also probably going to see more clearances come onto the market soon. So Roche has a lateral flow test, a lot like the Abbott test. That should be coming into the market soon. They're seeking authorization in the U.S. They're bringing it onto the market in Europe. And there's a couple of other large manufacturers with a lot of supply.